Welcome to the EdFacts Business Rules Single Inventory Training video. During this video, I'm going to give you an introduction of the EdFacts Business Rules Single Inventory, which I'll refer to as the BRSI for short. The BRSI can be found on the EdFacts Initiative site under Key EdFacts Reporting Documentation. From the EdFacts Business Rules Single Inventory page, you'll click the School Year 22-23 Excel spreadsheet to access the document. Please note that there is a school year 2016-17 through school year 21-22 BRSI spreadsheet. You will want to make sure that you're working with the school year 22-23 Excel spreadsheet when working with school year 22-23 files. After clicking the Excel link and the BRSI pulls up, this is what it will look like. The BRSI is a single inventory that contains business rules applied to EdFacts data throughout the data lifecycle at pre-submission and post-submission data quality review. There are several changes to the BRSI that are only applied to the school year 22-23 rules that can be found on the Version History tab. One of the changes includes business rules that were consolidated while others have been separated. There are no longer incremental BRSI rollouts. For school year 22-23, an updated BRSI will be published for each EdPass release, adding the rules implemented for files in each release. For subsequent school years, a complete BRSI will be published at the start of the collection cycle. Please note that EdFacts users will be notified via the support update each time the BRSI is updated and published. So you may open the BRSI and think, where do I begin? Well, this is the part of the video that will answer that question. Let's go through each of the columns. Column A is the data quality phase. It indicates whether the rule was applied pre-submission, meaning the rule was applied prior to the submission, or post-submission, which means the rule was applied to the data after the submission. Column B is the version number, which is a numbering schema to differentiate the versions of the rule for each school year. It starts with version 1 and then is incremented by 1 anytime the rule is updated during the school year. Column C is change status, and this states whether the business rule is the same as the previous school year. The current statuses are new, meaning it did not exist in the prior school year, changed, meaning the logic of the rule is different than the prior school year, and editorial, meaning no change in the logic of the rule. Column D is change explanation, which is an explanation of the change from the previous school year. This column is required when the change status field, column C, is either changed or editorial. Column E is the system of publication, which is the application or data quality process that displays the rule. The systems that are currently in this version are EdPass, ESS, February ESEA Review, and PSC Notice. Column F is the EdPass Rule ID, which is the ID assigned to the rule for EdPass. The field will be NA if the rule is outside of EdPass. EdPass rules are made of two parts with a dash in between. The first part is the 4-character data area abbreviation. For example, CHAR for charter, a dash, and then a 4-digit rule ID. Column G is the legacy rule ID, which is the ID assigned in the legacy BRSI, which means business rules created after school year 22-23 will be blank. Business rules created prior to school year 22-23 will have one or more legacy rule IDs in the field. Column H is the rule objective, which is the classification of the rule by the objective of the rule. The options for this column are accuracy, which is the relationship of the category sets, subtotals, and education unit total; completeness, which is all required data elements containing all permitted values are reported for all educational units. Also includes metadata mismatches, which are disconnects between data submitted and the responses to metadata surveys. Directory and rosters, which is the consistency and accuracy of data on LEAs, schools, charter authorizers, and management organizations. expected relationship, which is the relationship of data to other data or to a fixed point, format and validation, which is where data adhere to requirements in the file specifications, and then longitudinal is any comparison across school years, including comparison of last school year's data to the current year using both a percent and a base threshold. Column I is failure classification, which is the consequence of the rule failing. These values include file error, which is where the file is not recognized. EdPass cannot determine what type of file has been submitted, and the file must be corrected and re-uploaded. A format error is where the file does not conform to the record layout requirements in the file specification. In this situation, the file must be corrected and re-uploaded. Data error is where the data are incorrect and must be replaced with correct data. Rule failure means the data do not conform to the business rule and thus may be incorrect. The state needs to either replace with corrected data that conform or provide an explanation of why the data do not conform to the business rule. Please note that a data note is required to clear these rule failures. Columns J, K, and L are the SEA, LEA, and school level columns. They will indicate whether or not a rule is applied to the SEA level, LEA level, or school level with a Y for yes and N for no. Column M is titled Other. This column indicates whether the rule is applied to charter authorizers, management organizations, or charter contracts. A means that it applies to charter authorizers, M means it applies to management organizations, C means it applies to charter contracts, and N equals no, the rule is not applied to the file. Column N identifies the file spec numbers used in the rule. Column O identifies the number of data groups used in the rule. Column P identifies other data sources that could cause the business rule to fire. The acronym of any other data source used in the rule will be listed in this field. Those acronyms could include CSPR for Consolidated State Performance Report, or the name of the metadata collection in EdPass, such as child count metadata. Column Q is other question data. It lists the question number from the other data source used in the rule. Column R is titled Definition. This lists the condition of the data or the relationship of the data that should be true. The definitions are written in the positive, describing the expectation for the data. Column S is titled Rule Logic, and it's used when the business rule fails and a detailed technical statement of conditions that result in the business rule failing is needed. Any threshold used in this logic are listed in the next columns. Columns T, U, and V identify any thresholds that cause the rule to fail. T is the threshold base, which is the base number that the difference must exceed for the rule to fail. U is threshold percent, and it is the percentage difference that must be exceeded for the rule to fail. And V includes instructions on what to do with zero counts. However, please note this column may change in the future. Column W is the error message that includes text describing the problem that is displayed when the data fails the rule. In EdPass, the error message text does not include the specific data that resulted in the business rule failing. The specific data is displayed separately. Column X is titled Error Message Condition, which means that the pieces of data that is displayed to explain why the business rule failed. In EdPass, these conditions will be displayed next to the error message. Column Y is titled Multiple, and it indicates whether the business rule uses data from more than one file specification to determine failure. Y means that the rule uses data from more than one file specification to determine failure, and N means that the rule uses data from only one file specification to determine failure. For rules using data from multiple file specifications, the primary file column indicates which of the multiple file specs are primary. If the data for at least one primary file is present, but one or more secondary files are not present, a rule outcome of insufficient data will result. Column Z is titled Primary Files and is used when a business rule uses data groups from more than one file specification. One or more of those file specifications is the primary file specification. Now that we've gone through all of the columns, let's see how we could utilize the BRSI. An example of how to examine a business rule fail for data I submitted would be filtering by the rule ID in column F. Say my data failed for business rule ID DGO-0009. I could select that, and then all the information I needed to resolve the rule would be displayed. The BRSI is a useful tool when resolving data quality anomalies during the data pre- and post-submission process. For further assistance with the BRSI, please contact the Partner Support Center by phone or email using the information shown here. PSC is open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., excluding federal holidays.